They told the world this was the camp where Jews were treated humanely. A town, not a prison. A place with concerts, children's drawings, cafes, even laughter. The Nazis filmed it, photographed it, and pointed to it as proof that the rumors of mass murder were lies. But behind the painted walls and staged smiles, people were dying every single day. Of hunger, disease, despair, and of trains that left in the night and never came back. This was Theresienstadt, a place designed not just to imprison bodies, but to deceive the entire world. Here, hope itself was turned into a weapon. The elderly were told they would be safe. Artists were encouraged to create. Children were taught songs while their names were quietly added to deportation lists. Nothing here is accidental. Every brick, every performance, every promise served a lie so carefully constructed that even international observers believed it. And while cameras rolled, while orchestras played, and while visitors were guided down clean streets, thousands were already marked for death. To understand Theresienstadt is to understand how genocide can hide in plain sight, and how one camp became the most dangerous illusion the Nazis ever created. Chapter 1. The fortress becomes a prison. The first trucks arrive before dawn, their engines coughing in the cold Bohemian air, headlights dimmed, as if even the machines know they are not meant to be seen. Soldiers jump down, boots striking stone that has stood here for centuries, and within minutes the quiet town is no longer a town at all. Orders echo through narrow streets. Doors are kicked open. Residents are told to leave with what they can carry. By nightfall, Theresienstadt will no longer belong to those who lived here. It will belong to the Reich. Long before the Nazis ever spoke its name, Theresienstadt was built for a different war. In the late 18th century, the Habsburg Empire carved this fortress out of the Bohemian plain to defend against Prussian invasion. Massive walls rose from the earth, thick enough to absorb cannon fire, surrounded by moats and ramparts designed to hold an enemy at bay. The town inside was planned with military precision. Straight streets, regimented blocks, barracks, storehouses, parade grounds. It was not a place meant for comfort. It was a place meant to endure pressure. For generations, soldiers lived here. They drilled in the courtyards, slept in long rows, marched through gates that could be sealed shut in moments. Even after the fortress lost its military importance, the structure remained solid, self-contained, isolated from the larger cities of Bohemia, a place defined by walls, discipline, and control. When the Nazis looked across occupied Europe for locations to imprison Jews, Theresienstadt did not need to be invented. It only needed to be repurposed. By the autumn of 1941, the machinery of genocide was already in motion. Ghettos were overflowing. Deportations east were accelerating. And yet the Nazi leadership faced a problem. German and Austrian Jews, elderly veterans, decorated officers, professors, artists, did not fit neatly into the image of nameless enemies. These were people with connections, with visibility, with families who asked questions. Theresienstadt offered a solution. It was far from Berlin, yet close enough to transport routes. Hidden, yet accessible. A place that could be shown, if necessary. The SS seized it with efficiency that bordered on routine. Czech civilians were expelled, often with only hours' notice. Homes were confiscated. Shops shuttered. Signs replaced. Guards posted at every gate. The old fortress walls, once symbols of imperial defense, now marked a boundary no one inside could cross. The transformation happened so quickly that even those enforcing it barely paused to reflect. One day it was a provincial town. The next, it was a closed world. When the first Jewish transports arrived, there was confusion more than fear. People stepped down from trains expecting relocation, not imprisonment. They carried suitcases packed with winter coats, family photographs, documents proving loyalty to Germany, medals earned in the First World War. Many believed this was temporary, a holding point, a bureaucratic inconvenience. The fortress looked orderly. Streets were intact. Buildings stood. There were no watchtowers yet, no electrified fences. That illusion was part of the design. But inside, space collapsed almost immediately. Rooms meant for a single family were filled with dozens of people. Barracks designed for soldiers were packed wall to wall with bunks. The air turned stale. Damp stone walls sweated in winter and trapped heat in summer. The smell of unwashed bodies, old wood, and fear settled into everything. There was no privacy, no silence. At night, coughing echoed endlessly, a chorus of lungs already weakening. The Nazis sealed Theresienstadt not just physically, but psychologically. Letters were censored. News from outside disappeared. Inside the walls, time warped. Days blurred together under rigid schedules dictated by orders shouted in German. Jews were told they were now residents of a self-governing settlement. It was a phrase carefully chosen, repeated until it sounded official, even benevolent. In truth, nothing here was self-governed. Every decision flowed downward from the SS. The fortress itself did most of the work. Its layout allowed guards to control movement with minimal manpower. Gates funneled crowds. Courtyards became roll call points. Former parade grounds turned into spaces for forced labor. The same geometry that once organized armies now organized human confinement. You could feel in your body the way corridors narrowed, the way walls closed in, the way escape seemed unimaginable not because of guards, but because of stone. Theresienstadt's location mattered as much as its structure. It lay outside the major population centers, tucked away from curious eyes. Trains could arrive and depart without drawing attention. If questions arose, officials could point to maps, to documents, to the distance from Germany proper. This was not a camp, they claimed. It was a town, a resettlement area. The geography itself became part of the lie. Yet signs of something darker were impossible to ignore. Food was scarce from the beginning. Rations were deliberately inadequate, a slow pressure applied to every body inside the walls. Work assignments were relentless. Elderly men hauled bricks. Women scrubbed floors until their hands bled. The fortress echoed, not with music or laughter, but with commands, shuffling feet, and a low murmur of exhaustion. And still, many held on to hope. The absence of gas chambers here fed rumors that Theresienstadt was different, better, survivable. Some believed it might even be permanent. The Nazis encouraged this thinking, allowing cultural activities to emerge, tolerating lectures and performances in the early months. It cost them nothing. Hope, after all, is easier to control than despair. What no one inside could yet see was how carefully this place fit into a much larger system. Theresienstadt was never meant to be an endpoint. It was a filter, a stage, a holding pen where people could be sorted, observed, and eventually removed. The fortress walls that seemed to promise safety were already preparing them for something else, something beyond the horizon of this enclosed world. As 1941 turned into 1942, transports increased. The population swelled far beyond capacity. The streets grew quieter, not because life was calm, but because energy was being drained from every corner. Faces thinned, movement slowed. The fortress had done its job before a single killing center was ever mentioned by name. And as the gates closed each night, as guards locked them with practiced hands, Theresienstadt settled into its new identity. Not as a town, not yet as a death camp, but as something more insidious, a place where reality itself would be reshaped, where cruelty would be disguised as order, and where the world beyond the walls would be taught to look away. The deception had only just begun. Chapter 2. A ghetto unlike the others. By the time the next transports arrived, Theresienstadt had already learned how to swallow people whole. Trains rolled in with mechanical indifference, doors sliding open to release crowds who stepped down into a space that looked nothing like the ghettos they had heard about. There were no ruins here, no burned-out buildings, no streets choked with rubble. Instead, there were intact houses, orderly blocks, cobblestones still slick with morning frost. For many, that first sight planted a dangerous thought. Maybe this place really was different. The Nazis wanted that thought to take root. Theresienstadt was never meant to resemble Warsaw or Lodz. Those ghettos were instruments of open terror, their brutality impossible to hide. Theresienstadt was something else entirely. It was designed to confuse, to soften the edges of persecution just enough to make the truth harder to grasp. Even the word ghetto was avoided. Official documents called it a Jewish settlement, a retirement town, a place of resettlement. Language became the first layer of the deception. Inside the walls, the population changed rapidly. Elderly Jews from Germany and Austria arrived in growing numbers. Many of them war veterans who still wore their medals when they stepped onto the platform. Professors, musicians, former civil servants, rabbis, writers, people who had spent their lives integrated into German society, were now ordered into communal quarters, stripped of identity, told where to sleep and when to work. The shock was not only physical, it was existential. Everything they believed about belonging collapsed in a matter of hours. Theresienstadt's layout intensified that shock. Unlike the sprawling ghettos carved out of major cities, this was a sealed town from the start. Walls did not need to be built. They were already there. Gates did not need to be added. They simply had to be closed. Movement was tightly controlled, not by chaos, but by order. Streets were mapped. Buildings were numbered. People were assigned spaces down to the square meter. Overcrowding was not accidental. It was engineered. As more transports arrived, the numbers climbed beyond anything the fortress had ever held. Rooms meant for 4 now held 20. Attics and basements were converted into sleeping quarters. Wooden bunks rose in stacks, 3 and 4 levels high, leaving barely enough space to sit upright. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of sweat, damp clothing, and untreated illness. At night, the soundscape never stopped. Whispered prayers, groans of pain, the restless shifting of bodies pressed too close together. Food distribution revealed the true nature of the place. Rations were calculated with chilling precision, always just enough to keep people alive, never enough to sustain strength. Bread was weighed to the gram. Soup was thin, watery, often little more than warm liquid carrying a few floating scraps. Hunger became a constant companion, gnawing and sharp, dulling concentration, eroding patience, turning ordinary interactions into quiet struggles for survival. Yet outwardly, Theresienstadt maintained a veneer of structure. There were work assignments, schedules, notices posted on walls. There was an internal administration, staffed by Jews and overseen by the SS, that organized labor, housing, and distribution. To an outsider, it might have looked like order. To those living inside it, that order was suffocating. Every task, every movement, every decision was constrained by rules that could change without warning. This was one of the most insidious differences between Theresienstadt and other ghettos. Here, unpredictability was masked by routine. People lined up for roll call. They reported to work. They attended meetings. Life seemed to follow a rhythm. But beneath that rhythm was constant instability. Deportation lists appeared without explanation. Entire groups vanished overnight. No one knew who would be next, only that the system was always watching. The presence of culture further complicated perception. Lectures were allowed. Music was performed. Children attended secret classes. Artists sketched and painted with scavenged materials. For some, this became proof that Theresienstadt was survivable. For others, it was a painful contrast, a reminder of the world they had lost. The Nazis tolerated these activities not out of mercy, but because they served a purpose. A ghetto that appeared alive was easier to sell to the outside world. Isolation did the rest. Letters sent from Theresienstadt were censored and carefully managed. Postcards were limited in number and content, often pre-written with phrases that suggested normalcy. I am well. We are working. Do not worry. These messages traveled outward while the truth remained sealed inside the walls. Families who received them clung to hope. International observers saw no urgent alarm. The deception deepened. Inside, time began to feel distorted. Days stretched endlessly, marked only by hunger and fatigue. Seasons changed, but the conditions did not. Winter brought biting cold that seeped through stone walls and thin blankets. Summer brought heat that turned overcrowded rooms into suffocating chambers. Disease spread easily: typhus, tuberculosis, dysentery, thriving in the cramped, unsanitary environment. Medical care was scarce, supplies inadequate, doctors overwhelmed. Death became part of daily life, though it rarely announced itself loudly. People collapsed during roll call. Others simply did not wake up. Bodies were carried out quietly, wrapped in cloth, stacked in temporary morgues that filled faster than they could be emptied. Funerals were brief, often symbolic, sometimes impossible. Grief had no space to breathe. Survival demanded emotional restraint as much as physical endurance. Still, Theresienstadt retained its unique position in the Nazi system. It was not a killing center. There were no gas chambers here, no mass executions in plain view. That absence was deliberate. It allowed the camp to exist as a buffer, a place that blurred categories, that could be pointed to whenever questions arose. When rumors of extermination circulated, Theresienstadt stood as the counterexample. Proof: the Nazis claimed that Jews were being relocated, not destroyed. For the prisoners, this ambiguity was torture. Each transport announcement sent waves of fear through the ghetto. Names were read aloud, numbers assigned, luggage restrictions issued. People debated whether being sent east meant labor or death. Some believed it offered better conditions. Others sensed the truth, but had no power to resist. The uncertainty was relentless, eating away at morale, fracturing trust. As the months passed, Theresienstadt became increasingly crowded with people who did not belong anywhere else in the Nazi racial hierarchy. Elderly Jews deemed unfit for labor. The sick, the prominent, those whose disappearance might raise inconvenient questions. The fortress absorbed them all, compressing lives into a space already stretched to its limit. Every arrival made survival harder for those already inside. And yet, from the outside, the illusion held. The town still stood. Buildings still had roofs. Streets still had names. There were no visible mass graves, no smoke rising from crematoria large enough to draw attention. The camp existed in a gray zone, deliberately designed to confuse moral judgment. It was neither fully hidden nor fully revealed. By the end of the year, it was clear that Theresienstadt was not an exception in Nazi policy, but a refinement of it. A place where control was exercised through appearances, where suffering was organized rather than chaotic, and where hope itself became a tool of containment. The ghetto was unlike the others because it did not rely solely on terror. It relied on belief. And as belief took hold, belief in survival, in difference, in delay, the machinery beyond the walls continued to turn. Trains were being scheduled. Camps in the east were expanding. The fortress that seemed to offer refuge was quietly feeding something far more deadly. Inside Theresienstadt, most could not yet see it. But the ghetto's true purpose was already closing in, one transport at a time. Chapter 3: The Council of Elders. The order comes down quietly, without spectacle, written on paper and delivered with the same calm authority that governs everything inside the fortress. Theresienstadt, the SS announces, will be administered internally. The Jews will govern themselves. To those listening, weakened by hunger and exhaustion, the words sound almost merciful. A concession, a chance for dignity. In reality, it is one of the cruelest mechanisms the Nazis will ever perfect. The Council of Elders is established not as a privilege, but as a trap. Its members are chosen under duress, selected from among respected community leaders, professionals, rabbis, former officials, men who understand organization, who can command obedience, who still believe that reason might soften brutality. They are told their role is to maintain order, distribute food, assign labor, and represent the Jewish population. What they are not told, at least not at first, is that they will also be forced to decide who lives and who is sent away. From the beginning, the council operates under absolute SS control. Every decision is monitored. Every directive can be overturned without explanation. Guards stand close enough to hear conversations. Threats are implied rather than spoken. Compliance is expected, and punishment is swift. The illusion of authority is essential to the system. The council must appear powerful enough to enforce rules, yet weak enough to absorb blame. Daily life now flows through layers of bureaucracy. Work assignments are posted. Housing reallocations are ordered. Ration cards are distributed. Each action carries weight, because scarcity defines everything. There is never enough food, never enough space, never enough medicine. Every decision benefits some and harms others. Resentment grows quietly, directed not always at the SS, but at the men forced to execute SS orders. The council members feel it immediately. They see the looks, hear the whispers, feel the shift in how people speak to them. Once respected figures, they are now associated with authority inside a system of suffering. They walk through barracks where bodies lie stacked on bunks, listening to pleas they cannot answer. They know that no matter what they do, someone will suffer. And yet refusing to act means worse consequences for everyone. The most unbearable responsibility arrives with the transport lists. Orders are issued from above. Numbers, quotas, deadlines. The SS demands names. The council is told to compile them. At first, criteria are vague. The unemployed, the sick, the elderly. Later, the categories become arbitrary. Entire work units. Whole families. No explanations. No appeals. The lists must be delivered on time. The psychological weight is crushing. To select names is to choose death, even when the destination is officially described as labor in the East. By now, rumors have reached Theresienstadt. Whispers of camps where people vanish. Of smoke. Of no return. The council members understand the implications long before they are ever acknowledged openly. They sign papers knowing exactly what they mean. Some try to resist quietly. Names are shifted. Exceptions requested. Delays engineered. Others believe cooperation might preserve the ghetto itself, might keep transport smaller, less frequent. Each strategy is a gamble played with human lives. The SS watches closely, intervening whenever resistance becomes visible. Council members who push too hard are removed, arrested, deported. Their replacements learn quickly. The structure is deliberately unstable. Chairmen are replaced repeatedly, often sent on transports themselves once they have served their purpose. This constant turnover ensures fear. No one is safe, not even those at the top. Authority exists only as long as it is useful. The message is clear. Obedience buys time, nothing more. Inside the ghetto, the presence of Jewish administration creates fractures. Some prisoners resent the council bitterly, seeing them as collaborators. Others understand the impossible position they occupy. Arguments break out over food distribution, housing assignments, work exemptions. Hunger sharpens emotions. Morality blurs under pressure. The Nazis rely on this division. A divided population is easier to control. The council is also responsible for maintaining appearances. Cleanliness is emphasized. Barracks are inspected. Cultural activities are encouraged within limits. The ghetto must function smoothly, efficiently, quietly. Disorder is punished collectively. If rules are broken, rations are cut. Entire buildings suffer consequences for individual actions. Responsibility becomes communal, guilt shared by design. Meetings stretch late into the night. Papers pile up. Decisions are made under flickering lights in rooms that smell of sweat and damp stone. Council members age rapidly. Hair grays. Hands tremble. Sleep comes in fragments, interrupted by the knowledge that tomorrow will bring another impossible order. Some fall ill. Others break down completely. There is no relief. The SS maintains a careful distance. They do not need to shout. They do not need to explain. Their power is absolute and silent. A raised eyebrow, a delayed response, a sudden inspection. These are enough to enforce obedience. Violence is always present, even when unseen. Everyone knows it waits just beyond the next mistake. Children are not spared the consequences of this system. Orphaned by disease and deportation, They are assigned housing and rations through council decisions. Education is organized clandestinely, tolerated only so long as it does not interfere with labor demands. The council balances survival against compliance, always under threat that any deviation could bring retaliation. As months pass, the council becomes an integral part of the machinery of Theresienstadt. It is both shield and weapon, absorbing the daily brutality so the SS can remain distant, efficient, almost invisible. This distance allows the Nazis to claim detachment, to present the ghetto as orderly, self-run, civilized. The lie grows stronger with every form stamped and signed. Yet inside the council rooms, there is no illusion. Those seated there know they are trapped inside a moral labyrinth with no exit. Every path leads to harm. Every delay carries risk. They speak in low voices, choosing words carefully, aware that even walls may listen. Trust erodes. Desperation seeps in. Deaths continue to rise. Hunger worsens. Transports accelerate. The council delivers lists knowing they will never see many of those names again. Each departure hollows the ghetto further, leaving behind fewer workers, fewer caregivers, fewer voices. The burden grows heavier, the choice is narrower, and still, the system holds. The fortress stands. The administration functions. The world outside remains largely silent. Theresienstadt appears stable, controlled, almost humane. That stability is purchased at the cost of unimaginable moral violence, inflicted not only by the SS, but through the forced participation of their victims. By the time the council understands fully that there is no version of this arrangement that leads to survival for all, it is already too late. The machinery has locked into place. The ghetto has become a model, one that will soon be displayed to the world. And the men tasked with governing the impossible will soon be asked to play a role far darker than they can yet imagine. Chapter 4. A camp for the prominent. They arrive carrying papers they believe still matter. Military discharge documents. Academic credentials. Letters of commendation stamped with imperial eagles and iron crosses earned decades earlier. Some wear their medals openly, pinned to coats that hang loose on bodies already thinning from stress and hunger. These are men who once served Germany, women who once sang on its stages, taught in its universities, practiced medicine in its cities. When they step through the gates of Theresienstadt, many still believe their past will protect them. That belief is not accidental. It is cultivated. From the very beginning, the Nazis assigned Theresienstadt a special role within their expanding universe of camps and ghettos. This is where the prominent Jews are sent. The elderly, the decorated veterans of the First World War. Well-known artists, composers, professors, rabbis, lawyers. Jews from Germany and Austria, whose disappearance might raise uncomfortable questions. People whose names are recognizable, whose lives once intersected with non-Jewish society in ways that cannot be erased easily. Theresienstadt becomes a solution to a public relations problem. Unlike the anonymous masses herded into eastern ghettos, these individuals cannot simply vanish without notice. Families ask questions. Foreign governments inquire. Churches remember former congregants. Newspapers abroad still carry names. The Nazi regime understands that genocide, to function smoothly, must also manage perception. Theresienstadt offers a stage on which reassurance can be performed. Inside the ghetto, this distinction is felt immediately. Many new arrivals are elderly, some in their 70s or 80s, their bodies fragile, their movements slow. They are unprepared for forced labor, for climbing narrow staircases to overcrowded lofts, for sleeping on wooden planks without mattresses. The shock is devastating. Men who once commanded respect now struggle to stand through roll call. Women who lived surrounded by books and music now queue for watery soup that does nothing to quiet the hunger burning in their stomachs. Yet the Nazis continue to insist that this place is different, that it is a retirement settlement, that families will eventually be reunited, that work is temporary, that conditions will improve. These lies are reinforced through small, calculated allowances. Elderly prisoners are sometimes exempted from the most grueling labor. Intellectuals are permitted to organize lectures. Musicians are allowed to rehearse. Painters receive scraps of paper and charcoal. The message is subtle but clear. Your identity still exists here. Just enough to keep hope alive. The psychological impact is profound. Many cling to routine as proof of meaning. Professors deliver lectures to packed rooms, their voices echoing against stone walls as they speak of philosophy, mathematics, literature. For a moment, listeners forget where they are. They close their eyes and imagine lecture halls, warm lights, attentive students. When the lecture ends, reality crashes back in. Hunger returns. Cold seeps into bones. Guards wait outside. The Nazis observe all of this carefully. Culture, they understand, is useful. It creates order. It occupies the mind. It distracts from despair. It also creates images that can be shown, recorded, staged. A camp where Jews perform concerts and attend lectures does not look like a place of destruction. It looks civilized, controlled, humane. Behind the scenes, conditions continue to deteriorate. The presence of so many elderly prisoners accelerates mortality. Bodies weakened by age cannot withstand starvation. Disease spreads rapidly through cramped quarters. Tuberculosis thrives. Heart conditions worsen. Medical facilities are overwhelmed. Doctors, themselves prisoners, make impossible decisions daily. Who receives treatment? Who is sent away? Who is allowed to rest? Who must work despite illness? Death becomes constant, but quiet. It does not arrive in dramatic moments. It creeps in during the night. It takes people sitting on benches, lying on bunks, waiting in lines. Bodies are removed discreetly, recorded, processed. The ghetto absorbs loss without ceremony. For those left behind, grief must be contained. There is no space for collapse. Despite this, Theresienstadt's reputation spreads within the Jewish world. Compared to rumors from the East, it seems survivable. Parents send elderly relatives believing they will be safer here. Some even volunteer, thinking it is better than the unknown. The Nazis do nothing to correct these assumptions. In fact, they encourage them. As transports continue, the population shifts further toward those least able to endure. The ghetto becomes a place where time itself feels accelerated, where aging seems to happen overnight. Faces hollow, postures bend, voices grow weaker. Yet lectures continue. Music plays. Art is created. Life, in fragments, persists. This contrast is precisely what makes Theresienstadt so dangerous. The presence of culture does not mitigate suffering. It masks it. It creates a narrative that can be repeated outside the walls. A story in which Jews are relocated, not annihilated. A story in which the elderly are cared for. A story in which creativity flourishes despite hardship. Within the ghetto, this narrative fractures relationships. Some prisoners resent the emphasis on culture, seeing it as indulgent, disconnected from the daily struggle to survive. Others cling to it desperately, believing it preserves their humanity. Arguments break out over resources, over rehearsal time, over who is permitted to participate. Hunger sharpens these tensions. Despair amplifies them. The SS remains distant, allowing internal divisions to grow. They intervene only when necessary, reminding everyone who truly holds power. A canceled performance, a sudden deportation, a warning delivered without emotion. The illusion of tolerance evaporates instantly when it threatens control. Gradually, it becomes clear that prominence offers no real protection. Well-known figures disappear on transports, just like everyone else. Veterans with medals are sent east. Artists who performed for packed audiences vanish overnight. Their absence is explained away with bureaucratic language: resettlement, reassignment, labor duty. No one believes these words anymore, but no one can challenge them. The realization settles slowly and painfully. Theresienstadt is not a sanctuary for the prominent. It is a holding area, a place where reputations are neutralized, where visibility is managed until it can be erased safely. The camp does not preserve lives. It manages deaths. Still, the Nazis continue to refine the illusion. They allow photographs to be taken. They permit carefully selected visitors. They maintain the facade of a functioning town. And as international pressure grows, Theresienstadt's role becomes even more critical. This is the camp that will be shown. The proof that the Reich has nothing to hide. Inside the fortress, few yet understand how central they are to this coming performance. They sense something is wrong, that they're being watched not just as prisoners, but as actors. Their routines, their art, their suffering, all of it is being cataloged, shaped, prepared. The camp for the prominent is becoming something else entirely. A stage set, a deception refined to its highest form. And soon, the world beyond the walls will be invited to look inside. When that moment comes, everything in Theresienstadt will change. Chapter 5. Daily Life Under the Lie. Morning does not arrive gently in Theresienstadt. It crashes into the barracks with shouted orders and the scrape of boots on stone. Bodies stir from restless sleep, stiff from wooden planks and damp air that never quite warms. The smell is immediate. Sweat soaked into clothing that has not been washed in weeks. Sour breath. The sharp sting of sickness lingering in corners where air barely moves. People rise slowly, careful not to step on one another in the narrow spaces between bunks, already conserving energy for a day that will demand more than they can give. Roll call begins before hunger has even fully awakened, though it never truly sleeps. Prisoners line up in courtyards once meant for military drills, now crowded beyond recognition. Faces are gray in the early light. Some sway where they stand, knees trembling, hands clenched tight to keep balance. Guards count, recount, shout corrections. Numbers matter here more than names. If someone is missing, the entire group waits. Time stretches. Cold bites through thin coats. A body is eventually carried forward, lifeless, and the count continues. Breakfast follows, if it can be called that. A piece of bread, weighed carefully, passed from hand to hand as if it were gold. A cup of dark liquid that pretends to be coffee but smells faintly of burned grain. For many, this is all they will receive until evening. The bread is eaten slowly, torn into small pieces to make it last, each bite a calculation. Some hide a portion for later, pressing it into pockets, knowing it may harden before they can eat it again. Hunger dictates every decision, every movement, every thought. Work assignments are posted and carried out with relentless regularity. Men and women are sent to workshops, construction details, kitchens, laundries, administrative offices. The elderly are not exempt. Those too weak to work are marked, watched, quietly noted. Labor is not designed for productivity. It is designed for exhaustion. Bricks are carried from one end of the fortress to the other, only to be stacked and unstacked again. Floors are scrubbed until hands bleed. The purpose is discipline, not output. Inside the workshops, the air is thick with dust and sweat. Tools are shared, often broken, always insufficient. Supervisors, themselves prisoners, push workers to meet quotas imposed from above. Failure brings punishment, reduced rations, reassignment to harder labor, removal from favored housing. Every task carries consequences. Mistakes linger long after they are made. Housing conditions worsen as the population grows. Barracks overflow. Attics fill. Basements become living spaces where sunlight never reaches. The walls sweat in winter, trapping cold and damp that settle in the lungs. In summer, heat becomes unbearable, turning rooms into ovens where air grows stale and breathing feels like work. Privacy disappears entirely. Conversations are whispered or not had at all. Grief is swallowed, anger suppressed, fear constant. Disease spreads easily in these conditions. Lice infest clothing and bedding. Tuberculosis moves quietly from one body to the next. Diarrheal illnesses weaken already fragile prisoners, draining what little strength remains. Medical facilities exist in name only. Doctors and nurses work with almost nothing. No medicines, no equipment, no clean bandages. They rely on knowledge and improvisation, making decisions no physician should ever have to make. Who is treatable? Who is not? Who must be left to die? Death becomes routine. It no longer shocks. It interrupts, briefly, before life resumes around it. A man collapses during work detail. A woman does not wake up. A child grows weaker over days until breath simply stops. Bodies are removed, recorded, processed. The crematorium operates constantly, its presence known to everyone by the faint, acrid smell that sometimes drifts across the ghetto. Funerals, when they occur, are rushed, often symbolic, grief compressed into moments that must be shared with dozens of others. Food distribution remains the central axis of existence. Soup kitchens become gathering points where people measure time not by clocks, but by ladles. The soup is thin, often little more than hot water with a few floating vegetables. Still, it is everything. Lines stretch endlessly. Arguments break out over portions. Accusations fly. Too much, too little, favoritism, theft. Hunger strips away patience and dignity alike. Even the most gentle souls feel it changing them. Children move through this world with unsettling quiet. Their laughter, once common, fades as they adapt to scarcity. They learn quickly where to stand, when to speak, how to avoid drawing attention. Some attend clandestine classes, sitting cross-legged on floors while teachers whisper lessons about history, geography, poetry. These moments offer brief escape, islands of normalcy in a sea of deprivation. But hunger does not spare them. Their growth slows. Their faces thin. Many do not survive. The Nazis allow just enough structure to keep the ghetto functioning. Notices are posted. Rules are announced. Schedules are enforced. There is an internal order that creates the illusion of stability. To an outsider, Theresienstadt might appear organized, even calm. Streets are swept. Buildings remain standing. There is no visible chaos. This is the lie at the heart of daily life. The appearance of order masking constant suffering. Cultural activities persist, not as luxuries, but as lifelines. Music rehearsals take place in cramped rooms where instruments are shared and tuned by ear. Theater performances are staged with makeshift props. Artists sketch scenes of daily life, capturing hunger, fear, fleeting moments of beauty. These activities are tolerated, even encouraged, because they serve multiple purposes. They occupy minds. They preserve morale. And they can be shown, later, as evidence of humane treatment. Yet participation comes at a cost. Rehearsals mean energy expended. Performances mean time away from rest. Those involved must still work, still queue for food, still endure roll calls. Culture does not replace hunger. It coexists with it, often amplifying the pain by reminding participants of a world that once valued their talents freely. Communication with the outside world is tightly controlled. Letters are censored, limited in number, restricted in content. Prisoners are instructed on what they may write. Health complaints are forbidden. Despair is erased with red pencil strokes. The messages that leave Theresienstadt speak of work, of adaptation, of endurance. They carry reassurance. They do not carry truth. Families reading them cling to hope, unaware that each letter is part of the deception. Inside, time stretches unnaturally. Days feel endless, yet weeks vanish without notice. Seasons change almost imperceptibly, marked only by shifts in temperature and light. There is no sense of progress, only repetition. Wake, count, work, cue, eat, sleep, repeat. Survival becomes mechanical, stripped of future plans. People stop asking what comes next because the answer is always uncertain. The psychological toll is immense. Anxiety never fades. Deportation rumors circulate constantly. Lists appear without warning. Names are called. Suitcases are packed and repacked, sometimes multiple times, as transports are delayed or canceled. Each announcement sends shockwaves through the ghetto. Friendships fracture under suspicion. Trust erodes. People avoid attachments, knowing they may be broken overnight. Yet acts of quiet humanity persist. A shared piece of bread, a whispered prayer, a blanket passed to someone weaker. These moments do not change the system. but they resist its total domination. They remind people that they are still human, even as the camp tries to reduce them to numbers and functions. The SS remains largely invisible in daily routines, appearing just enough to remind everyone who controls their fate. A sudden inspection, a shouted order, a beating administered publicly as warning. The threat of violence hangs constantly in the air, rarely needing to be exercised. Fear does the work. Theresienstadt continues to exist in this suspended state, neither openly murderous nor genuinely livable. It grinds people down slowly, efficiently, quietly. The lie that sustains it, that this is a settlement, a town, a place of relative safety, seeps into daily life, shaping expectations and dulling alarm. Many cling to it because the alternative is too terrifying to face. By nightfall, bodies collapse back onto bunks, muscles aching, stomachs still empty. The sounds of the ghetto soften but never disappear. Coughing, whispering, the distant closing of gates. Sleep comes in fragments, haunted by dreams of food, of home, of trains. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after that. Daily life under the lie continues, steady and suffocating, preparing everyone inside Theresienstadt for something they cannot yet see, but will soon be forced to confront. Chapter 6. Culture as Survival. On certain evenings, when the guards retreat to their posts and the worst of the day's labor has finally loosened its grip on exhausted bodies, something unexpected drifts through the stone corridors of Theresienstadt. Music, not loud, not triumphant, but fragile and insistent, slipping through cracks in walls, carrying with it a reminder of a world that once existed beyond hunger and fear. For a few moments, the ghetto breathes differently. The impulse to create does not disappear when freedom is stripped away. In Theresienstadt, it sharpens. Surrounded by deprivation, prisoners turn to culture not as entertainment, but as survival. Words, notes, drawings, and ideas become tools as essential as food because they preserve something the camp is designed to erase: the inner life. The Nazis do not create this cultural world, but they allow it to exist, watching carefully as it grows, calculating how it might serve their purposes. Many of those imprisoned here were artists long before the gates closed behind them, composers who once filled concert halls, writers whose books lined shelves across Europe, painters trained in academies, teachers accustomed to shaping young minds. They arrived stripped of instruments, materials, and audiences, yet the impulse to create persists. A violin appears, repaired again and again with wire and glue. Pencils are scavenged. Paper is reused until it falls apart. Music is memorized, so it cannot be confiscated. Rehearsals take place in overcrowded rooms where the air is thick and bodies press close. Musicians sit shoulder to shoulder, conserving warmth, tuning instruments by ear. When they play, the sound is imperfect, sometimes cracking, sometimes barely audible. It does not matter. For those listening, the effect is immediate and overwhelming. Hunger recedes. Walls dissolve. For a few minutes, they are not prisoners. They are human beings remembering who they were. The repertoire is vast and daring. Classical compositions, folk songs, new works written inside the ghetto itself. Some pieces are subtle acts of defiance, layered with irony and coded meaning. Others are raw expressions of grief and longing. Choirs form, their voices thin but determined. When they sing, the sound vibrates through bodies that have not felt resonance in months. Tears are common. So is silence afterward, heavy with everything that cannot be spoken. Theater flourishes as well. Performances are staged with minimal props, costumes assembled from scraps. Actors memorize lines while standing in food queues, whispering dialogue between spoonfuls of soup. The plays are sometimes light, sometimes deeply symbolic. Audiences pack into rooms not meant to hold them, standing for hours despite aching legs and empty stomachs. Laughter breaks out, startling in its intensity. For a moment, despair loosens its grip. Art takes quieter forms too. Painters sketch daily life, the lines for food, the crowded bunks, the hollow faces reflected in small mirrors. Children draw scenes of homes they remember, gardens that no longer exist, suns that shine too brightly to be real. These drawings are hidden, protected, passed hand to hand like fragile relics. They are not meant for display. They are meant to exist, as proof that the children themselves exist. Education becomes an act of resistance. Despite strict prohibitions, teachers gather children in secret, turning storage rooms and corners of barracks into makeshift classrooms. Lessons are whispered. Books are shared, memorized, hidden. Geography is taught as imagination. History as memory. Literature as refuge. For the children, these lessons offer structure in a world defined by chaos. For the teachers, they offer purpose when everything else has been taken. The Nazis observe all of this with interest. Culture, they realize, is useful. It keeps people occupied. It reduces unrest. It channels energy away from rebellion. More importantly, it creates images that can be manipulated. A camp where Jews sing and paint looks different from one where they starve in silence. The SS begins to tolerate, then subtly encourage, certain activities. Permissions are granted selectively. Venues are designated. Schedules are approved. This encouragement is never generous. It is calculated. Performances can be canceled without explanation. Participants can be removed at any time. Culture exists at the mercy of the system, never independent of it. Artists understand this, even as they take advantage of the space allowed. They know they are walking a narrow line, using what little freedom they are given to preserve dignity while avoiding punishment. Some prisoners struggle with the contradiction. How can art exist alongside so much suffering? Is it right to perform while others starve? These questions circulate quietly, debated in whispers late at night. For many, the answer is simple. Without culture, despair wins completely. Without expression, the camp achieves its goal. Creation becomes not an escape from reality, but a confrontation with it. Music rehearsals often end abruptly, broken by the sound of boots or shouted orders. Instruments are hidden quickly. Scores are folded and tucked away. The fragility of these moments makes them more precious. Every performance could be the last. Every gathering carries risk. Yet people return again and again, driven by something stronger than fear. Children play a central role in this cultural world. Their voices fill choirs. Their drawings capture attention. Their performances, innocent and earnest, move audiences to tears. They embody the future the camp seeks to erase. For adults watching them, the pain is sharp, but so is the determination to protect them, to give them moments of joy even as the world collapses around them. The Council of Elders becomes involved, organizing events, allocating space, negotiating permissions with the SS. This places culture firmly within the administrative structure of the ghetto, tying it even more closely to the system of control. Some resent this, seeing art co-opted by authority. Others see no alternative. Survival requires compromise. As Theresienstadt's reputation spreads, culture becomes central to its identity. Stories circulate about concerts, lectures, intellectual life. Compared to other camps and ghettos, it appears vibrant, almost alive. This perception is exactly what the Nazis want. They allow it to spread unchecked, knowing it will blunt criticism and suspicion from the outside world. Inside, the contrast between cultural life and physical suffering grows sharper. Performers collapse from exhaustion. Musicians play while battling illness. Teachers teach while hungry. Art does not shield them from deportation. Many of the most active cultural figures are later sent east, their talents extinguished in places far worse than this fortress. Their absence leaves gaps that cannot be filled. Those who remain continue anyway. New performers step forward. New works are created. The cycle repeats. Loss is absorbed into the culture itself, becoming material for expression. Songs mourn those who have vanished. Drawings record absence as much as presence. Culture becomes an archive of pain as well as resilience. The SS begins to see Theresienstadt as something unique within the camp system, a place that can be shown, a place that can speak for the Reich. Plans begin to form, still unspoken to most prisoners, about inspections, visits, documentation. Culture will be central to this next phase. It will be curated, displayed, framed. For now, prisoners sense only a shift in atmosphere. Rehearsals are watched more closely. Performances are photographed. Certain individuals receive attention from camp authorities. There is a feeling of being observed not just as inmates, but as performers on a stage whose audience lies beyond the walls. Still, on evenings when the music rises and voices blend together, that knowledge fades briefly. In those moments, culture fulfills its deepest purpose. It reminds people that they are more than victims. That even here, even now, the human spirit can assert itself against a system designed to erase it. But the very visibility of this defiance makes it dangerous. What begins as survival is slowly being transformed into spectacle. And soon, Theresienstadt's cultural life will no longer belong to those who created it. It will belong to the lie. Chapter 7. Children in the Ghetto. They are often the quietest figures in Theresienstadt, moving through the crowded streets with eyes that seem too old for their faces. Some cling to parents whose bodies are already failing. Others walk alone, having learned quickly that childhood offers no protection here. Their shoes are worn thin. Their coats hang loose. Hunger has sharpened their features, but it has not yet extinguished the questions they carry with them. Where are we? How long will we stay? When do we go home? Children arrive in Theresienstadt in waves, stepping down from transports that have already stripped them of normality. Many have come from comfortable homes in Germany and Austria, places where school books and toys once defined their world. Others arrive from ghettos, already familiar with deprivation. All of them are thrust into a space that offers no room for innocence. The fortress does not bend for childhood. It absorbs it. From the beginning, children are both visible and invisible. They stand out in lines, their smaller bodies swallowed by adult crowds. Their voices cut through the low murmur of the ghetto when they speak or cry. Yet their needs are rarely prioritized. Rations are the same for everyone, regardless of age. Work assignments may spare the youngest, but hunger does not. Disease does not. Fear does not. Housing for children varies wildly. Some remain with parents in overcrowded rooms, sharing bunks meant for adults. Others are placed in children's homes, organized by age and gender, run by caretakers who are themselves prisoners. These homes offer a semblance of structure: beds lined up in rows, scheduled meals, rules meant to create order. For many children, this is the closest thing to stability they will know inside the camp. Within these spaces, adults attempt the impossible task of protecting childhood in a place designed to destroy it. They invent routines. They enforce bedtime. They tell stories in whispers after lights out. They ration comfort as carefully as food, knowing both are in short supply. The children learn quickly when to be quiet, when to listen, when to pretend they are not afraid. Education becomes a quiet rebellion. Officially forbidden, schooling continues in secret. Lessons are held in attics, storage rooms, corners of barracks. Teachers use memory when books are unavailable, reciting poetry, explaining arithmetic, sketching maps in the dust. Children sit cross-legged on cold floors, absorbing every word as if it were nourishment. For an hour, they are students again, not prisoners. The subjects taught reflect both hope and reality. Geography lessons describe places the children may never see again. History lessons linger on stories of survival and endurance. Literature offers language for emotions too large to name. Even basic instruction carries risk. If discovered, teachers face punishment. Children risk losing what little protection they have. Yet the lessons continue, driven by the belief that education preserves identity. Art becomes another refuge. Children draw constantly, using whatever materials they can find. Scraps of paper, cardboard, the backs of forms. Their drawings are filled with suns, houses, gardens, animals, images of a world that feels distant but not yet unreachable. Some depict the ghetto itself, crowded bunks, lines for food, figures behind walls. These drawings are not created for display. They are created because the children need to make sense of what surrounds them. Music reaches them too. They sing in choirs, their thin voices blending together in songs taught by adults who struggle to keep emotion from breaking through. Performances are moments of pride, even joy. Parents watch with aching hearts, torn between happiness at seeing their children alive and fear for what comes next. Applause feels both necessary and dangerous, as if joy itself might attract punishment. Hunger defines childhood in Theresienstadt. It is not an abstract discomfort. It is constant, sharp, and consuming. Children think about food endlessly. They dream of it. They talk about it. They trade stories of meals once eaten, recipes remembered in precise detail. Some save crumbs under pillows. Others give portions to younger siblings, their own hunger deepening as a result. Malnutrition stunts growth, weakens immune systems, leaves bodies vulnerable to every illness that passes through the ghetto. Disease strikes children quickly. Their weakened bodies cannot resist tuberculosis, scarlet fever, diarrhea. Medical care is scarce. Doctors and nurses do what they can, but supplies are almost non-existent. Many children die quietly, slipping away in crowded rooms where grief must be contained. There is no space for prolonged mourning. Other children watch, learning far too early that survival is fragile. Deportations haunt childhood relentlessly. Names are read aloud. Groups are assembled. Children cling to parents as transport orders are announced. Some are separated, sent with one parent while the other remains behind. Others are placed on transports alone, told they are going somewhere better. Promises are made because truth feels unbearable. Suitcases are packed with care, filled with small treasures, a book, a photograph, a toy. Most of these items will never be seen again. The psychological toll is immense. Anxiety becomes normal. Children learn to read adult expressions, to sense danger in silence, to prepare for loss before it happens. Nightmares are common. Bedwetting returns in children who had long outgrown it. Silence settles over those who once spoke freely. Childhood compresses under pressure, turning into something brittle and tense. Yet moments of resilience persist. Games are invented that require no equipment. Stories are shared and embellished, passed from child to child like secret currency. Friendships form with intense speed, driven by the knowledge that time is uncertain. These bonds provide comfort, even as they are constantly threatened by separation. Adults watch all of this with a mix of devotion and despair. Parents struggle with guilt, feeling responsible for circumstances they cannot control. Caretakers exhaust themselves trying to shield children from the worst realities, often at great personal cost. Teachers and artists focus their energy on the young, believing that if anything must survive this place, it should be them. The Nazis understand the power of children as symbols. They observe the children's homes. They note the drawings, the choirs, the organized activities. To an outsider, these scenes can be framed as evidence of care, of normalcy. The reality, that most of these children will not survive, is carefully hidden behind curated impressions. As Theresienstadt evolves toward its role as a showcase, children become central to the performance. They are dressed neatly for inspections. They rehearse songs. They are encouraged to smile. For a brief time, their suffering is disguised behind clean clothes and rehearsed routines. Cameras will later capture these images, freezing moments that hide the truth behind them. Inside the ghetto, knowledge spreads quietly. Older prisoners begin to understand that children sent east rarely return. Whispers circulate. Fear deepens. Parents face impossible decisions, whether to volunteer for transports to stay with their children, whether to hide them, whether to trust promises that feel increasingly hollow. There are no good choices, only choices that postpone pain. As months pass, the children's population fluctuates violently. Entire groups disappear on transports. New arrivals take their place, carrying fresh confusion and fear. The cycle repeats, relentless and cruel. The ghetto absorbs childhood again and again, each time leaving fewer traces behind. What remains are fragments, drawings hidden in walls, songs remembered by those who survive, names recorded in lists. These fragments will later become evidence, testimony to lives interrupted and futures denied. At the time, they are simply the residue of existence. Children in Theresienstadt live in a suspended state, caught between protection and exposure, hope and terror. They adapt because adaptation is the only option. They endure because they must. And in doing so, they reveal one of the most devastating truths about the camp. Not just that it imprisoned and killed, but that it forced even the youngest to learn how to survive inside a lie. Soon, that lie will be put on display for the world to see. And the children, whether they understand it or not, will be placed at its center. Chapter 8: Disease, Starvation, and Silent Death. The first sign is usually the cough. It starts as a dry rasp in the chest, easy to ignore in a place where everyone is tired and the air is always cold. Then it deepens, turns wet, pulls breath out of the body in sharp, painful bursts. In Theresienstadt, coughing never belongs to one person for long. It spreads through rooms, through barracks, through entire buildings, until it becomes part of the background sound of the ghetto, as common as footsteps on stone. Disease does not arrive suddenly here. It seeps in, nourished by hunger, overcrowding, and exhaustion. Bodies already weakened by inadequate food cannot resist infection. Immune systems collapse quietly. A minor illness becomes deadly. A fever that might have passed in the outside world becomes a death sentence behind these walls. Starvation is the engine that drives everything. Rations are deliberately calculated to keep people alive just long enough to work, not long enough to recover. The hunger is not dramatic at first. It is a dull ache that grows sharper with time, hollowing the stomach, clouding the mind. People feel lightheaded during roll call. Hands shake while carrying tools. Thoughts slow, then narrow, until food becomes the central obsession. As months pass, starvation reshapes bodies. Faces become angular. Cheeks sink. Eyes grow unnaturally large in skulls that seem to shrink. Muscles waste away, leaving limbs thin and fragile. The elderly are hit first and hardest. Many arrive already weakened by age, unable to adapt to the sudden deprivation. They lose weight rapidly, struggle to stand, then collapse entirely. Food distribution becomes a daily reckoning. Bread is weighed precisely, broken into pieces that feel insultingly small. Soup, thin and gray, offers warmth but little nourishment. Some prisoners trade possessions for extra rations, watches, rings, photographs of loved ones. Others steal when desperation overwhelms fear. Arguments erupt in food lines, then dissolve into shame and silence. Hunger corrodes morality, not because people are weak, but because the body demands survival above all else. Medical care exists in name only. There are doctors in Theresienstadt, many of them highly trained professionals, but they are stripped of tools. No antibiotics, few medicines, limited bandages, almost no disinfectant. Hospitals are overcrowded, underheated, and filled with patients far sicker than any facility could manage even under normal conditions. Doctors diagnose with their eyes and hands, knowing that for many patients there is nothing they can do. Tuberculosis spreads relentlessly. It thrives in damp, crowded rooms where people sleep inches apart. The coughing becomes constant, echoing through corridors at night. Blood appears on handkerchiefs, then on clothing. Patients grow weaker, breath shorter, until even sitting upright becomes impossible. Isolation is rarely feasible. There is nowhere to put the sick that does not endanger the healthy. Disease moves freely through the ghetto, indifferent to age, status, or talent. Typhus and dysentery follow close behind. Lice infest clothing and bedding, their presence a constant irritation and a deadly threat. Sanitation systems buckle under the strain of overcrowding. Latrines overflow. Clean water is scarce. Diarrheal illnesses sap strength rapidly, leaving victims dehydrated and delirious. Children and the elderly succumb quickly. Death comes not with violence, but with quiet exhaustion. The smell of illness becomes inescapable. Sweat mixed with waste. Damp clothing that never dries. The faint sweetness of decay, lingering in rooms where bodies lie too long before removal. These smells cling to skin and fabric, embedding themselves into daily life. They are impossible to escape, reminders that the ghetto itself is sick. Death in Theresienstadt is rarely dramatic. There are no mass executions in public squares, no gunshots echoing through the streets. Instead, people simply stop moving. A man sits down during roll call and does not rise again. A woman lies down to rest and never wakes. A child fades over days, growing quieter until breath slips away unnoticed in a room full of others struggling to survive. The removal of bodies becomes routine. Prisoners assigned to this task move through the ghetto with stretchers and carts, lifting the dead with practiced efficiency. There is little ceremony. Names are recorded. Numbers are tallied. The living avert their eyes, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. To dwell on each death would make survival impossible. The crematorium works constantly. Smoke is not always visible, but its presence is known. Ash settles invisibly, blending into the dust of the fortress. People avoid speaking about it openly, but everyone understands what it represents. The dead do not leave Theresienstadt in coffins. They leave as residue. Grief becomes compressed, internalized. There is no space for mourning rituals. Funerals, when permitted, are brief and crowded, stripped of comfort. Prayers are whispered quickly before guards lose patience. Tears are swallowed. People learn to grieve silently, privately, often alone at night, when the ghetto grows momentarily quiet. Children witness death daily. They step around bodies in corridors. They watch friends disappear. Some grow numb. Others cling desperately to caretakers, terrified of being left alone. Their questions, why, when, who is next, go unanswered because no one has answers that offer comfort. Childhood absorbs trauma as part of its education here. Starvation sharpens every loss. People mourn not only loved ones, but strength, memory, clarity. Hunger affects the mind as much as the body. Concentration falters. Tempers flare. Depression deepens. Some prisoners withdraw entirely, conserving energy by speaking less, moving less, engaging less with the world around them. Others push themselves to exhaustion, driven by fear that stopping means dying. Suicide, though rarely discussed, occurs. Despair becomes unbearable for some. The knowledge that suffering will only worsen, that loved ones have already been lost, that escape is impossible, crushes the will to endure. These deaths are recorded quietly, folded into the statistics of the ghetto, their causes rarely acknowledged. The Nazis monitor mortality carefully. Death rates are tracked, reported, analyzed. When numbers rise too quickly, adjustments are made, not to improve conditions, but to manage appearances. A slight increase in rations here, a temporary reduction in labor there, enough to stabilize the population, not enough to heal it. Human lives are treated as variables in an equation of control. The Council of Elders is forced to manage the consequences. Hospital beds are allocated, burial logistics organized, families notified. Each task deepens their involvement in a system that grinds people down. They watch death accelerate, powerless to intervene meaningfully, blamed by some for decisions they never truly make. Despite everything, people continue to care for one another. Nurses work beyond exhaustion. Fellow prisoners carry the sick to hospitals, sit beside them, offer sips of water, whisper words of comfort. These acts do not change outcomes, but they matter. They assert humanity in a place designed to erase it. As the ghetto grows more crowded, death becomes a constant presence, no longer feared so much as expected. People measure time by who is still alive. They stop asking whether someone has died and start asking when. Survival becomes a fragile state, always temporary, always under threat. From the outside, none of this is visible. Theresienstadt still stands. Buildings remain intact. Streets are swept. Cultural activities continue. To those who look only at surfaces, the camp appears functional, even orderly. The silent death unfolding inside its walls leaves no obvious trace. This is the genius of the system. By killing slowly, by letting hunger and disease do the work, the Nazis avoid spectacle. They create plausible deniability. Death here looks natural, inevitable, unfortunate, but not criminal. It is a lie sustained by bureaucracy, by distance, by silence. Inside the ghetto, people feel the truth in their bodies every day. They feel it in the weakness of their limbs, in the dizziness that comes from standing too long, in the shallow breaths taken at night. They know that survival is not guaranteed by effort or virtue. It is granted arbitrarily, temporarily, and often revoked without warning. As months pass, the population thins not through mass murder, but through attrition. The ghetto eats its inhabitants slowly, relentlessly. Those who remain grow quieter, more watchful, more aware that their Theresienstadt is not simply a place of confinement, but a place where life is systematically worn away. And still, transports continue to depart. The sick, the weak, the elderly, those most affected by starvation and disease, are often the first selected. Death inside the ghetto feeds death beyond its walls. The silent dying prepares people for something louder, something final, something waiting in the east. Theresienstadt does not need gas chambers to kill. Hunger and disease are enough. And as the death toll rises quietly, the camp's true function becomes clearer to those still alive. This is not an accident. This is design, and the worst is still to come. Chapter 9. Transports to the East. It always begins with a list. A piece of paper posted on a wall, guarded by silence and fear, surrounded by bodies pressing forward, desperate to read names before someone else does. The crowd leans in, breath held, eyes scanning lines of text that decide everything. Some names are circled, others are numbered. And for those who find themselves listed, the world narrows instantly, collapsing into a single thought that no one dares say out loud. This is not a journey. This is an ending. In their Theresienstadt, deportation is not a sudden shock. It is a constant presence, woven in a daily life like hunger and disease. The ghetto exists in a permanent state of anticipation, everyone aware that sooner or later their name will appear. Transports to the east are announced with bureaucratic precision, framed as labor relocations, resettlements, opportunities. The language is cold, sanitized, deliberately vague. It conceals more than it reveals, and that uncertainty is its power. At first, many believe the lies. The East is spoken of as a place of work, of farms, of factories where effort will be rewarded with better food and conditions. Some even hope deportation might mean escape from the overcrowding and starvation of their Theresienstadt. The absence of mass killing within the fortress feeds this belief. There are no gas chambers here, no firing squads. The logic seems convincing, especially to those desperate for hope. But rumors circulate, carried by those who arrive from elsewhere and by the few who somehow return. Whispers of camps where people are stripped, separated, murdered. Of smoke rising constantly. Of names that never reappear. These stories are fragmented, inconsistent, almost impossible to fully grasp. The mind resists them. To believe them completely would be unbearable. The SS understands this hesitation and exploits it ruthlessly. Deportations are staged carefully. Prisoners are instructed to pack luggage, reinforcing the illusion of relocation. Weight limits are set. Lists of permitted items are distributed. People are told to bring clothing, utensils, documents. Children clutch toys. Elderly men pack photographs and medals. Suitcases become symbols of hope, even as they are instruments of deception. On departure days, the ghetto vibrates with tension. Entire buildings wake early, eyes red from sleepless nights. Those not selected avoid eye contact, ashamed of their relief. Those selected move mechanically, following instructions, afraid that any mistake might bring punishment not only to themselves, but to others. The sound of footsteps echoes differently on these mornings, heavier, slower, as if the fortress itself senses what is happening. Assembly points fill quickly. Families cling together, unsure whether they will remain so. Guards shout orders. Prisoners stand in rows, luggage at their feet, waiting for names to be called again, checked and rechecked. Any discrepancy causes delays that stretch for hours. Time loses meaning. Hunger gnaws. Fear sharpens every sensation. Children are often at the center of these scenes. They ask questions adults cannot answer. Why do we have to go? When will we come back? Parents lie because truth feels like betrayal. They promise reunion. They promise safety. They promise survival. Some believe the promises themselves, needing them to function. Others know they are lies but cannot bring themselves to say it. The trains wait beyond the gates. Freight cars, wooden, dark, already carrying the smell of confinement. When doors slide open, reality intrudes sharply. The cars are crowded before anyone steps inside. There are no seats, no windows, or only small barred openings near the roof. Buckets sit in corners for waste. Guards rush the boarding process, shouting, striking anyone who hesitates. Luggage is piled wherever it fits, often blocking movement entirely. Once inside, space disappears. Bodies are pressed together so tightly that sitting becomes impossible. Standing becomes unbearable. The doors close with a final metallic sound that echoes in the chest. Darkness settles instantly, broken only by slivers of light and the sound of breathing, crying, praying. The train lurches forward, and Theresienstadt vanishes behind it. For those left behind, the departure is almost as devastating. Buildings empty suddenly. Familiar faces disappear. Bunks are vacated, then quickly reassigned to new arrivals or those displaced by overcrowding. Life resumes with brutal efficiency. The absence of thousands is absorbed quietly, as if the ghetto has learned how to erase its own losses. As deportations increase, patterns emerge. The elderly are selected first, then the sick, then those deemed unnecessary for labor. Later, entire work units are removed at once. Families are split. Parents sent one way, children another. Each transport reshapes the population, leaving behind fewer caregivers, fewer skilled workers, fewer voices of experience. The Council of Elders is forced deeper into complicity. Orders arrive specifying numbers that must be met. Lists must be compiled. Appeals are meaningless. Resistance brings swift retaliation. Council members argue late into the night over criteria, over strategies to minimize harm. Some believe volunteering the weak might protect the strong. Others believe spreading selections evenly might reduce suffering. No approach spares lives. Every decision feeds the machinery. Knowledge grows slowly, painfully. By 1942, it is clear to many that transports do not lead to survival. The East becomes synonymous with disappearance. People begin to fear selection more than hunger. Anxiety intensifies. Sleep becomes elusive. Every announcement triggers panic. Some try to hide. Others seek exemptions. Bribes are offered. Extra work, favors, anything to avoid being listed. The system absorbs all of it, unmoved. Children's homes empty at terrifying speed. Groups vanish overnight. Caretakers watch their charges line up with suitcases, try to memorize faces they know they may never see again. Songs are sung quietly as comfort, even as voices break. For those who remain, guilt settles heavy and persistent. Survival begins to feel like betrayal. The Nazis maintained strict control over information. Returnees are rare and often silenced. Letters from the East are non-existent or heavily censored. Official explanations continue to emphasize labor and resettlement. The lack of concrete proof allows denial to persist, even as fear deepens. Many cling to uncertainty because certainty offers no hope. Transport days become the most feared moments in the ghetto's calendar. People mark time by departures. They remember dates by who left and who remained. The sound of trains becomes a trigger, its distant rumble sending waves of dread through the population. Even those not selected feel its weight, knowing their turn may come next. As deportations accelerate, Theresienstadt's true function becomes undeniable to those inside. It is not a refuge. It is a funnel, a place where people are collected, managed, displayed, and then removed when convenient. The fortress that once seemed to offer protection now reveals itself as a waiting room for annihilation. And yet, the system remains efficient, almost calm. There are no riots, no mass resistance. Fear and uncertainty keep people compliant. The Nazis rely on this restraint, on the hope that maybe, somehow, the next transport will be different. Hope becomes the final chain binding people to obedience. For the outside world, the transports remain largely invisible. Trains depart quietly. Records are classified. Theresienstadt continues to exist, its population fluctuating, but never vanishing entirely. It appears functional, controlled, manageable. The absence of visible slaughter reinforces the lie that deportation is not death. Inside the ghetto, those who remain carry the weight of those who have gone. Empty spaces haunt familiar rooms. Names linger in memory. Conversations pause at the mention of the East. People stop planning beyond the next day, then beyond the next hour. Survival narrows into endurance. As 1943 approaches, deportations show no sign of slowing. In fact, they intensify. The machinery beyond the walls demands more bodies. Camps in the East require constant replenishment. Theresienstadt continues to supply them, one list at a time. The fortress stands. The gates open and close. Trains arrive and depart. And with each transport, the ghetto sheds another piece of itself, inching closer to the moment when its deception will be tested before the eyes of the world. Soon, Theresienstadt will not only send people to the East, it will be asked to prove that the East is nothing to fear. Chapter 10. The Red Cross Illusion. The decision is made far from Theresienstadt, in offices where maps are clean and paper smells new. Questions are being asked. Rumors are spreading beyond the Reich. Reports of mass murder circulate in neutral countries, carried by refugees, diplomats, fragments of intercepted truth. The Nazis need an answer, something visible, something convincing. And once again, Theresienstadt is chosen. Inside the ghetto, the shift is felt before it is explained. Orders arrive abruptly. Deportations increase, then pause, then increase again with terrifying speed. Entire transports are assembled and sent east in rapid succession. Thousands are removed in a matter of weeks. The reason is not stated, but the effect is unmistakable. Space opens up. Overcrowded rooms suddenly feel less suffocating. The population drops just enough to make the fortress appear manageable. Then the real work begins. Streets are cleaned with unusual urgency. Buildings are repaired, painted, scrubbed. Broken windows are replaced. Grass is planted where dirt once lay bare. Benches appear in courtyards. Signs are installed with neat lettering. Cafes are created where none existed before. A playground is constructed for children who have not played freely in months. Every change feels surreal, as if the ghetto is being dressed in borrowed clothes. Prisoners are reassigned with new purpose. Some are ordered to garden, others to repair facades, others to rehearse performances. The labor is still forced, still exhausting, but it carries a different tone. This is not preparation for survival. It is preparation for display. People sense it immediately, though few understand the full scale of what is coming. Whispers spread quickly. There will be a visit. Foreigners. Inspectors. The Red Cross. The name carries weight, even here. It represents neutrality, humanitarian concern, the outside world paying attention. For some, it sparks hope. For others, dread. Because hope, in Theresienstadt, has learned to wear a mask. The SS begins issuing precise instructions. Who may be seen, where they may stand, what they may say. Children are selected for visibility. The sick are hidden. The weakest prisoners are confined indoors or removed entirely. Barracks near inspection routes are improved, while others are ignored. Reality is rearranged to fit a script. Cultural life is elevated and formalized. Concerts are scheduled. Choirs rehearse intensively. Theater performances are refined. Artists are instructed to decorate spaces that will be shown. The same culture that once functioned as survival now becomes spectacle. Prisoners perform not for themselves, but for an audience that must be convinced. Children are dressed carefully. Their clothes are cleaned and mended. They practice songs, smiles encouraged, posture corrected. Caretakers rehearse them like actors, knowing what failure might mean. The children do not fully understand why this matters so much. They only sense the tension, the fear beneath the forced cheerfulness. The ghetto's administration is drawn deeply into the preparation. The Council of Elders receives direct orders from the SS. Routes are mapped, timelines established, talking points rehearsed. Any deviation will bring consequences. The council members comply, trapped once again in an impossible role, complicit in a lie they know will cost lives. Behind the scenes, the cost is already being paid. Those deported to make room for the visit are gone forever. Families know it. Survivors feel it in the sudden absence of familiar faces. The beautification of Theresienstadt is built on disappearance. The illusion requires sacrifice, and the Nazis take it without hesitation. When the day arrives, the ghetto holds its breath. The delegation enters through gates that have been scrubbed clean. They are escorted carefully, surrounded by SS officers who control every movement, every pause, every glance. The route is fixed, the timing precise. Nothing is left to chance. Prisoners line the streets, positioned exactly where they are meant to be. Smiles appear, some genuine, many forced. Guards watch closely. The visitors see children playing in a courtyard. They see men reading newspapers. They see women tending gardens. They hear music drifting through open windows. They visit workshops where prisoners appear busy, productive, calm. A cafe serves coffee. A shop displays goods. The town looks alive. They do not see the barracks not included on the route. They do not smell the rooms where sickness lingers. They do not witness the hunger that defines every hour outside this performance. They do not ask to go where they are not invited. Prisoners speak when spoken to, repeating phrases they have been instructed to use. We work. We have food. Conditions are improving. Each sentence is rehearsed, safe, stripped of truth. Some prisoners fear that saying too much might bring punishment later. Others fear that saying too little might expose the lie. Silence becomes the safest option. The children perform flawlessly. Their voices rise in song, thin but steady. The visitors smile. Notes are taken. The scene is powerful, disarming. A place where children sing cannot be a place of murder. The logic feels natural, comforting, wrong. The visit is brief, but its impact is enormous. When it ends, the delegation leaves with impressions carefully curated by the SS. Their report, later written, reflects what they were shown, not what was hidden. It speaks of relative normalcy, of order, of humane conditions. It does not accuse. It reassures. Inside Theresienstadt, the performance collapses as quickly as it was assembled. Benches remain, but hope evaporates. Deportations resume almost immediately, larger and more brutal than before. Many of those who performed, musicians, actors, children, are placed on transport soon afterward. The message is unmistakable. Participation offers no protection. For prisoners, the aftermath is devastating. The knowledge that the outside world has seen Theresienstadt and failed to understand it settles heavily. Some feel betrayed. Others feel foolish for ever hoping. Despair deepens, not just because of what was lost, but because of what was missed. The chance to be believed, the chance to be saved. The SS, however, is satisfied. The illusion has worked. Theresienstadt has fulfilled its role as proof that rumors of genocide are exaggerated, even fabricated. The camp becomes a reference point in Nazi propaganda, cited whenever questions arise. The deception is now official, documented, reinforced by international authority. Within the ghetto, trust fractures further. Prisoners argue over who spoke, who smiled, who performed too well. Guilt spreads indiscriminately. Survival itself begins to feel like complicity. The psychological toll is immense, layered atop hunger, disease, and loss. The Red Cross visit becomes a haunting memory, not because of what happened, but because of what did not. No rescue followed, no intervention, no relief. The visit changed nothing for those inside the walls, except to confirm that appearances matter more than truth. For the Nazis, Theresienstadt is now proven. It is not just a ghetto or a transit camp. It is a weapon, a living exhibit designed to neutralize outrage, delay action, and sustain denial. The success of the illusion emboldens them to go further. Plans begin to form for something even more permanent, even more dangerous. If a visit can deceive, then film can immortalize the lie. Cameras can freeze the illusion in time, replay it endlessly, distribute it widely. Theresienstadt is no longer just a stage for visitors. It is about to become a set, and the prisoners, whether they know it or not, are about to be forced into their final performance. Chapter 11. Filming a Fiction. The cameras arrive quietly, without announcement, without explanation, as if they belong here as naturally as the guards and the lists and the hunger. Heavy equipment is carried through gates that have already learned how to hide the truth. Lenses are unpacked, tripods set, wires run along walls that have heard too many secrets. For the prisoners of Theresienstadt, the meaning is unmistakable. The lie is no longer temporary. It is about to be recorded. The order comes down from above with chilling clarity. A film will be made. Not a documentary, not a record of reality, but a presentation. A story. The title alone is an act of cruelty disguised as generosity. The Führer gives the Jews a city. Every word is false, yet every word is meant to sound benevolent. The city already exists. The Jews did not receive it, and the Führer gave them nothing but death postponed. Inside the ghetto, preparations begin immediately. The SS takes control of every detail. Streets chosen for filming are cleaned again, though they were cleaned only weeks earlier. Buildings are repainted where paint can be found. Signs are rearranged. Windows are dressed. The same spaces shown to the Red Cross are prepared once more, refined further, perfected for the unblinking eye of the camera. Prisoners are selected carefully, not at random, not by need, but by appearance. The young, the relatively healthy, those who still have weight on their faces, those who can walk without limping, smile without collapsing, sing without coughing. Others are removed from sight. The sick disappear. The starving are hidden. Some are deported outright to clear space and remove risk. The film will not tolerate truth. Roles are assigned. Workers will appear busy and productive. Shopkeepers will arrange goods they do not own. Musicians will perform pieces chosen not for meaning, but for mood. Children will play games in courtyards newly swept for the occasion. Everyone is instructed on where to stand, where to walk, when to move. Spontaneity is forbidden. Reality is dangerous. The presence of the cameras changes the air inside Theresienstadt. Fear sharpens. People speak more softly, move more carefully. They know that being seen is both opportunity and threat. A wrong gesture, a tired expression, a stumble. Any of it could draw attention, punishment, removal. Survival now depends not only on endurance, but on performance. The director is a Jewish prisoner, forced into the role under SS supervision. He understands cinema. He understands composition, timing, illusion. That knowledge, once a source of pride, is now a weapon turned against his own people. He is given instructions he cannot refuse. Make it convincing. Make it calm. Make it beautiful. His compliance will not save him, but refusal will certainly kill him. Scenes are filmed repeatedly. A man reads a newspaper, takes a bite of bread, nods contentedly. Cut. Again. A woman browses in a shop, selects an item, smiles. Cut. Again. Children run, laugh, swing on playground equipment installed only for this purpose. Again, again, again. Each repetition drains energy from bodies already exhausted, but the SS demands perfection. Music fills the courtyards on command. Choirs sing pieces chosen for warmth and harmony. Their voices thin but disciplined. Musicians play concerts for cameras rather than audiences. Their faces composed, their hands steady despite hunger trembling beneath the surface. Some recognize the bitter irony immediately. Their art, once a refuge, is now evidence against their own suffering. Between takes, guards shout. Adjustments are made. People are repositioned like props. Smiles are corrected. Posture fixed. The cameras capture only what they are meant to capture. The lens never wanders into the overcrowded barracks. It never lingers on skeletal bodies. It never records the smell of sickness or the sound of coughing that fills the ghetto at night. Children are used relentlessly. They are filmed learning, playing, singing, as proof of care and humanity. Caretakers coax them gently, desperately, knowing how fragile they are. Some children are too weak to perform and are replaced. Others collapse after filming, their energy spent for the sake of illusion. Parents watch from a distance, pride and terror twisting together in their chests. Food appears during filming that does not normally exist. Tables are set. Plates are filled. For the duration of a scene, abundance is staged. Afterward, the food is removed. The memory of it lingers, more painful than hunger itself. Prisoners understand now that the lie is not only visual. It is psychological. It shows them what could exist, then takes it away. The SS watches every moment closely. They know the power of images. They know that film can outlive witnesses, outlast testimony, shape belief long after those inside their Theresienstadt are gone. This is not documentation. This is preemptive denial. A weapon designed to silence future accusations before they can be made. As filming continues, deportations resume quietly in the background. Those no longer needed for the film are selected for transports. Some of the very people featured prominently, musicians, actors, children, are placed on lists once their scenes are completed. Their usefulness has ended. Their survival is irrelevant. The film must look alive, but it does not require living participants afterward. Among the prisoners, despair deepens. The knowledge that the world will see this film and believe it crushes what little hope remains. They understand now that even truth, when surrounded by lies, can be rendered invisible. Their suffering will be denied not because it did not happen, but because it was deliberately overwritten. The filming drags on for weeks. Exhaustion compounds. Illness spreads again as people are forced together repeatedly. Mistakes are punished harshly. A missed cue, a faltering smile, a visible cough. The SS has no patience for imperfection. This fiction must be flawless. When the cameras finally leave, there is no announcement, no relief, no reward. The equipment is packed up and removed as efficiently as it arrived. The streets fall silent again. The sets remain briefly, then begin to decay. Benches break. Paint peels. Goods disappear. The ghetto exhales, but the damage is permanent. Soon after, the deportations intensify. Entire groups are removed in rapid succession. Many of those who appeared in the film vanish without a trace. The director himself is deported and murdered. Musicians who play for the cameras are sent east. Children who sang are loaded onto trains. The lie has consumed its creators. The film itself will be shown selectively, used as evidence whenever accusations arise. It will be cited as proof that Jews were not exterminated, that camps like Theresienstadt were humane, cultural, orderly. Few will question what they see. Fewer still will ask what lies outside the frame. Inside Theresienstadt, the aftermath is brutal. Trust erodes further. Survivors struggle with guilt, with the knowledge that their forced participation has helped sustain the system that is killing them. Some withdraw completely. Others cling desperately to culture, to memory, to anything that affirms reality against the recorded lie. The SS considers the operation a success. Theresienstadt has proven its value beyond doubt. It is no longer just a ghetto, a transit camp, or a holding pen. It is propaganda incarnate, a place where genocide does not need to hide, because it has learned how to disguise itself. For the prisoners who remain, the understanding is devastating. The outside world has not only failed to see them, it has been shown something else entirely, and accepted it. Rescue feels impossible now. Truth feels fragile. Survival feels accidental. The cameras are gone, but their presence lingers. Every smile feels suspect. Every performance feels dangerous. The ghetto moves forward under the weight of being watched by ghosts of an audience that will never know what truly happened here. And as the war grinds on and the Reich begins to fracture, Theresienstadt enters its final phase, not as a lie in preparation, but as a lie already believed. The performance is over. The consequences are just beginning. Chapter 12. After the cameras left. When the last camera is carried out through the gates, there is no applause, no announcement, no sense of closure. The streets of Theresienstadt look the same, but something essential has shifted. The illusion has done its work. The lie is no longer being rehearsed. It has been delivered. And now, with the performance complete, the camp is free to return to its true function. The change is immediate and brutal. Deportations resume with renewed force, faster and larger than before. Lists appear with alarming frequency. Names are read with mechanical indifference. Those who had been spared for the sake of filming now find themselves summoned without warning. Musicians who played for the cameras. Actors who smiled on cue. Children who sang songs of happiness. Their usefulness has ended. Their presence is no longer required. The departure days come closer together now, compressing time inside the ghetto. There is barely a pause between one transport and the next. Buildings empty and refill in rapid cycles, each wave stripping away more of what remains. The rhythm of daily life fractures under the strain. People stop unpacking their belongings. Suitcases stay half-ready, tucked beneath bunks like permanent shadows. For those who remain, the aftermath is a psychological collapse. The fragile hope that the world might intervene after seeing Theresienstadt has evaporated. The Red Cross visit changed nothing. The film changed nothing. Worse than nothing, it confirmed that appearances matter more than truth, that suffering can be staged away, that reality can be overwritten. Conversations grow quieter. People avoid eye contact when lists are posted. Survivors carry the weight of knowing that the outside world has seen something and believed it. They feel exposed and erased at the same time. Their suffering has not been denied outright. It has been replaced. Conditions worsen rapidly. The brief improvements made for inspections are abandoned. Benches break and are not repaired. Gardens wither. Shops empty. Food rations drop again, lower than before, as resources are diverted elsewhere. The ghetto sinks back into overcrowding as new arrivals pour in. Jews evacuated from other camps and ghettos as the war shifts and front lines move. These arrivals bring new horrors. Prisoners stumble in wearing striped uniforms, their bodies already broken by places far worse than Theresienstadt. They carry stories of Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, names spoken in whispers, heavy with finality. Their presence shatters any remaining illusions. The East is no longer abstract. It has faces now, voices, scars. Disease explodes once more. Typhus spreads rapidly among the weakened population. Tuberculosis flares. Medical facilities collapse under the surge. Doctors work without pause, knowing they are fighting a losing battle. Death rates climb sharply. Bodies are removed daily, sometimes hourly. The crematorium struggles to keep pace, its constant operation becoming an unspoken marker of time. Children disappear in terrifying numbers. Entire homes are emptied in a single transport. Caretakers stand in doorways long after the rooms have been cleared, staring at rows of vacant bunks. Drawings remain pinned to walls. Names linger on attendance lists that no longer matter. Childhood, already fragile, is now almost entirely extinguished. The Council of Elders faces its most impossible phase. Orders come faster than they can be processed. Numbers demanded by the SS increase without explanation. The council is forced to choose again and again, knowing with certainty now what selection means. Their authority erodes further as desperation spreads. Some prisoners openly accuse them of complicity. Others defend them quietly. The tension threatens to fracture what little cohesion remains. The SS grows harsher. Patience disappears. Punishments become more frequent, more visible. Beatings occur openly. Threats are issued casually. The pretense of benevolence is no longer necessary. The world has been shown what it needs to see. The mask can slip. At night, the ghetto sounds different. Coughing intensifies. Crying is more frequent, less restrained. Trains rumble in the distance more often, their presence felt even when unseen. Sleep becomes shallow and fragmented, haunted by the certainty that tomorrow may bring a list with familiar names, or one's own. For some, despair turns inward. People withdraw, conserving energy, speaking less, moving only when required. Others grow restless, pacing, whispering, searching for patterns that might predict survival. Small acts of kindness continue, a shared blanket, a stolen moment of conversation, but they feel fragile, almost defiant. Cultural life shrinks, but does not vanish. Music is played quietly now, less public, less frequent. Lectures fade as audiences thin. Art continues in private, sketches hidden away, words written in margins. Culture no longer carries the illusion of protection. It exists purely as resistance, a refusal to let the lie be the final record. The Nazis' confidence grows. Theresienstadt has proven itself effective. It has absorbed attention, neutralized criticism, and continued to supply transports. It functions as both warehouse and alibi. As the war turns against Germany, this efficiency becomes even more valuable. Camps closer to the front are evacuated. Prisoners are funneled inward. Theresienstadt becomes a dumping ground for the Reich's collapsing system. New arrivals bring chaos. They are weaker, more traumatized, often incapable of work. Overcrowding intensifies. Resources stretch beyond breaking. Tensions flare between long-term prisoners and newcomers, each group struggling to survive with dwindling means. The SS exploits these divisions, intervening only when necessary to maintain control. Information becomes sharper, more frightening. Stories of mass murder are no longer rumors. They are confirmed through fragments, through survivors who speak quickly, urgently, before they are silenced or deported again. The knowledge changes everything. Deportation is no longer feared, it is understood. Some begin to prepare mentally for death. They give away possessions. They whisper last words to friends. They memorize names and faces, hoping someone will remember. Others refuse to accept inevitability, clinging fiercely to life, even as it slips further away. Survival becomes an act of stubbornness, as much as chance. As 1944 draws on, the war's distant rumble becomes more noticeable. Allied bombings are spoken of in hushed tones. Rumors of German defeats circulate, offering brief, dangerous hope. Could the end come in time? Could liberation arrive before the next transport? These questions hover constantly, impossible to answer. The SS responds with heightened control. Security tightens. Deportations continue. Typhus outbreaks are managed not by care, but by isolation and neglect. The ghetto is sealed tighter, as if to contain the evidence of what is happening inside. Theresienstadt is no longer a stage. It is a pressure cooker. The knowledge that the lie has already succeeded weighs heavily. Even if liberation comes, even if survivors tell their stories, the film exists. The report exists. The illusion has been preserved in official records. Truth will have to fight its way back from the margins. Inside the fortress, people live with that knowledge daily. They understand that they may not be believed, that their suffering may be questioned. That denial has already been planted. This realization cuts deeply, adding another layer of cruelty to their imprisonment. And still, life continues in fragments. People wake. They line up. They work. They wait. Each day, survived feels borrowed. Each night, endured feels like a small victory. The ghetto holds together not because it is strong, but because it has not yet been allowed to collapse. But the end is approaching, not in the way many hope, not as rescue or relief. The Reich is crumbling, and as it does, it sheds human lives with increasing desperation. Theresienstadt is about to receive the full weight of that collapse. The cameras are gone. The lie has been delivered. And now, with no audience left to impress, the camp enters its most dangerous and deadly chapter yet. Chapter 13. The War Turns. The sound arrives before the proof. Distant, muffled, carried on rumors rather than airwaves. German defeats. Allied advances. Cities bombed. Front lines collapsing. Inside Theresienstadt, the war feels impossibly far away, yet suddenly closer than it has ever been. The fortress remains sealed, but something beyond its walls is shifting, and everyone inside can feel it in the tightening grip of the SS and the growing panic beneath their authority. By late 1944, the Reich is no longer confident. It is reactive, desperate. The careful choreography that once governed Theresienstadt begins to fray. Orders contradict each other. Deportations are announced, canceled, then reinstated with brutal urgency. The system that once moved with cold precision now lurches, driven by fear rather than control. For the prisoners, this instability is terrifying because it means predictability, however cruel, is gone. New transports arrive not from ghettos, but from camps being evacuated as the front lines move westward. Prisoners stumble through the gates wearing striped uniforms, their bodies skeletal, their eyes hollowed by things Theresienstadt has not yet fully witnessed. They bring the East with them. Auschwitz, Majdanek, camps where murder is immediate, industrial, undeniable. Their stories cut through lingering doubt like knives. There is no longer room for disbelief. These arrivals overwhelm the ghetto. Barracks already packed beyond capacity absorb thousands more. People sleep sitting up, leaning against walls, pressed together so tightly that turning over becomes impossible. The air grows foul. Disease spreads faster than ever. Typhus erupts, carried by lice that thrive in the chaos. The ghetto is no longer merely starving. It is rotting from within. The SS responds not with care, but with containment. Entire buildings are quarantined. Prisoners inside are left to fend for themselves with minimal food and water. Guards avoid contact, afraid of infection. The sick are abandoned. Doctors attempt to organize treatment with nothing but determination and exhaustion, knowing that for many, isolation is a delayed death sentence. Fear permeates everything. The knowledge that the Nazis are losing the war does not bring immediate hope. It brings danger. History has taught these prisoners that retreating regimes become more violent, not less. The question whispered in corridors and bunk rooms is not whether Germany will fall, but how many will be killed before it does. Deportations continue, though their purpose shifts. Now they are less about labor and more about erasure. Evidence must be destroyed. Witnesses silenced. Camps emptied. The machinery accelerates, even as it breaks down. Trains leave overcrowded and undersupplied, heading east and south to destinations that change constantly as the front advances. No one knows where they will end up. Many do not survive the journey. The Council of Elders is pushed beyond endurance. Orders arrive demanding impossible numbers. The council argues, pleads, negotiates for time, knowing that delay may save lives. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it does not. Council members themselves are increasingly targeted, removed and replaced as the SS grows more suspicious and ruthless. Authority becomes meaningless. Survival becomes random. Inside the ghetto, morale fractures along new lines. Some cling desperately to rumors of liberation, counting days, listening for distant artillery, scanning the skies for planes. Others refuse to hope, convinced that the Nazis will kill them all before surrendering. Arguments break out. Faith is tested. Silence becomes more common than speech, as people conserve emotional energy the way they once conserved food. Children are now rare. Most have already been deported. Those who remain are thin, quiet, watchful. They no longer draw suns and houses. Their pictures darken, filled with walls, trains, faceless figures. Caretakers struggle to shield them from panic. But panic has become the air everyone breathes. Childhood has almost completely vanished from Theresienstadt. The SS presence grows harsher and more erratic. Guards are younger now, less disciplined, often drawn from units already retreating. Violence becomes more visible. Beatings occur for minor infractions. Threats are shouted rather than implied. The old confidence is gone, replaced by aggression fueled by fear. Prisoners sense it immediately. This is the behavior of men who know they may soon be held accountable. Food rations drop again. Supply lines are disrupted. What little enters the ghetto is diverted elsewhere. Hunger becomes sharper, more acute. People faint during roll call with increasing frequency. Deaths from starvation and disease spike dramatically. The crematorium works without pause, though even it struggles to keep up. Bodies are stacked, then moved, then stacked again. The dead outpace the living. Despite everything, fragments of humanity persist. Nurses continue to care for the sick, even when it puts their own lives at risk. Prisoners share rumors, warnings, scraps of information gleaned from new arrivals. Acts of kindness become quieter, more deliberate, almost sacred. A blanket passed to someone shivering. A whispered prayer. A name remembered. Information from outside becomes more reliable, though still fragmented. Germany has lost major cities. Allied troops are advancing for both East and West. The Red Army is closer now, its presence felt in the tightening of SS behavior. For the first time, liberation feels conceivable, not imminent, but imaginable. That possibility changes everything. Some prisoners begin to plan for survival beyond the camp. They discuss what they will say, who they will look for, where they might go. Others refuse to engage, afraid that hope will make the inevitable loss unbearable. Both reactions are understandable. Both coexist uneasily in overcrowded rooms where tomorrow is never guaranteed. The Nazis begin destroying records. Documents are burned. Files disappear. The administrative clarity that once defined Theresienstadt dissolves into chaos. The lie that sustained the camp is no longer carefully maintained. There is no audience left to impress. The priority now is speed, removing people, covering tracks, delaying reckoning. Death marches begin elsewhere, and their survivors arrive here. They bring horror in motion, stories of forced marches in winter, of prisoners shot for falling behind, of bodies lining roads. Theresienstadt absorbs them too, a final collection point for the remnants of a collapsing system. The ghetto becomes a convergence of suffering from across Europe. Disease explodes uncontrollably. Typhus spreads beyond quarantine. The SS panics, fearing infection, fearing chaos. Their response is brutal isolation rather than treatment. Entire sections of the camp are sealed. People inside are left with almost nothing. Death becomes concentrated, accelerated. And yet, the end draws nearer. Distant artillery is now undeniable. Not imagined, not rumored. Heard, felt. The sound is faint but unmistakable, a low thunder that vibrates through stone. Some prisoners cry openly for the first time in months. Others sit in stunned silence. The future, long erased, flickers back into view. The SS tightens control one last time, then begins to withdraw in subtle ways. Fewer inspections, fewer patrols, orders delivered hastily. Guards talk among themselves, their voices tense. Something is coming, and they know it. Inside Theresienstadt, survival enters its final, most dangerous phase. The war's turn does not bring relief. It brings uncertainty layered atop suffering. Will the Nazis abandon the camp? Will they massacre its inhabitants? Will disease claim everyone before help arrives? No one knows. The waiting becomes unbearable. The ghetto holds its breath. The lie that once protected the Nazis has served its purpose. Now, with the Reich collapsing, Theresienstadt is no longer needed as deception. It is simply a problem to be managed before the world arrives. And the prisoners, weakened, sick, terrified, and clinging to fragments of hope, stand on the edge of a moment that will decide everything. Liberation is close enough to hear, but not yet close enough to feel safe. Chapter 14. Liberation. The gates do not open with ceremony. There is no trumpet, no announcement, no sudden rush of celebration. Liberation arrives in Theresienstadt quietly, almost cautiously, as if even freedom is unsure of what it is about to encounter. For days, rumors have moved faster than reality. Guards disappearing, orders going unanswered, patrols thinning. And then, one morning, the fortress simply feels different. The weight that has pressed down on every breath for years begins, slowly, to lift. The SS presence fades unevenly. Some guards vanish overnight. Others remain, tense and uncertain, awaiting orders that never come. Their authority erodes visibly. Shouted commands lose urgency. Threats go unfulfilled. Prisoners watch closely, afraid to believe what they are seeing. In a place where hope has so often been weaponized, belief itself feels dangerous. Disease, however, does not retreat with the guards. Typhus rages unchecked, spreading rapidly through the overcrowded ghetto. Entire sections are quarantined, sealed off not by cruelty now, but by necessity. The smell of sickness is everywhere. Fevered bodies lie in rows, delirious, too weak to rise. Liberation, when it comes, will arrive in the middle of a medical catastrophe. On the 8th of May, 1945, the reality finally breaks through the fog of exhaustion and fear. Soviet troops approach. News filters in through whispers, then confirmation. The Red Army has arrived at the outskirts. Theresienstadt, the fortress of deception, is no longer under Nazi control. When the first Soviet soldiers enter, they are confronted not by cheering crowds, but by silence. Prisoners stand still, watching, unsure how to react. Many are too weak to move. Others are afraid that this is another illusion, another cruel reversal. Some have seen too many uniforms change for trust to come easily. The soldiers move carefully, their faces hardening as they take in what surrounds them. They see skeletal bodies wrapped in rags. They see children with hollow eyes. They see piles of unburied dead. They smell disease and decay. This is not a victory parade. This is an emergency. Liberation brings confusion as much as relief. The ghetto is sealed off immediately, not to imprison, but to contain the typhus outbreak. Doctors and medics arrive, overwhelmed by the scale of illness. Supplies are rushed in, but distribution is slow and cautious. Food must be introduced carefully. Bodies weakened by starvation cannot process abundance. Some die after liberation, their systems unable to recover. For survivors, freedom feels unreal. The gates are open, but many do not leave. They sit on bunks they have slept on for years, unable to imagine anywhere else. Others wander the streets aimlessly, touching walls, benches, doors, as if confirming that the fortress no longer owns them. Some cry openly. Others remain numb, emotions locked behind years of restraint. The Soviet medical teams work relentlessly. Quarantine zones are established. The sick are isolated. The dying are comforted. Nurses and doctors, many of them prisoners themselves, finally receive real support, real medicine, real tools. Even so, death continues. Liberation has come too late for thousands whose bodies have already been destroyed. Children emerge slowly from hiding places and quarantine buildings. There are far fewer than anyone expects. Those who remain cling to caretakers, uncertain, frightened by unfamiliar faces and languages. For them, freedom is abstract. They have grown up behind walls. The world beyond is frightening in its openness. As days pass, the full scope of Theresienstadt becomes clear. Records are uncovered. Death tolls calculated. Names compiled. The scale of suffering is documented piece by piece. Nearly everyone has lost someone. Many have lost everyone. Families search for one another desperately, calling out names, scanning lists, asking soldiers, doctors, anyone who might know. Reunions are rare. Absence is the rule. The emotional impact of liberation is complicated by guilt. Survivors' guilt weighs heavily. Why am I alive? Why not them? These questions echo constantly, especially among those who held positions of responsibility, those who performed in propaganda, those who were spared deportation while others were sent east. Freedom does not erase these burdens. It amplifies them. The outside world begins to arrive: journalists, investigators, aid organizations. They walk the same streets, once shown to the Red Cross and the cameras, but now the illusion has collapsed. The benches are broken, the gardens overgrown. The truth is visible everywhere, in the bodies of survivors, in the emptiness left by the dead. Theresienstadt can no longer hide. Yet the damage done by deception lingers. Survivors sense skepticism in some visitors, a residue of the propaganda that once portrayed this place as humane. They feel the need to explain, to justify, to prove their suffering. The lie has not died with the regime. It must be confronted and dismantled. For many, liberation brings immediate displacement. Survivors are moved to hospitals, refugee camps, temporary housing. The ghetto empties slowly, reluctantly. Some prisoners refuse to leave until they are forced, afraid of what awaits them outside. Home is often gone. Families are gone. Communities erased. Freedom means starting from nothing. Theresienstadt itself becomes a place of memory almost overnight. The fortress that once contained lives now holds absence. Rooms are empty. Walls echo. Drawings left behind by children stare out from peeling surfaces, silent witnesses to what happened here. The camp's purpose has ended, but its presence remains heavy and unavoidable. For the survivors, the future is uncertain. Physical recovery is slow. Psychological recovery, even slower. Nightmares persist. Hunger does not vanish immediately. It lives on in habits, in fear of scarcity, in the inability to trust abundance. Many struggle to speak about what they endured. Words feel inadequate, fragile against the enormity of loss. And yet, survival itself is an act of defiance. Each breath taken outside the system, designed to erase them, is a victory. Each testimony given chips away at the lie that sustained Theresienstadt for so long. The truth, once hidden behind performances and films, begins its slow, painful return. The liberation of Theresienstadt is not an ending. It is a threshold. The suffering does not stop at the gates. It follows survivors into hospitals, into ruined cities, into decades of memory and silence. But the machinery of deception has been broken. The fortress no longer belongs to the Reich. What remains now is reckoning and remembrance, because the story of Theresienstadt does not end with liberation. It demands to be remembered for what it truly was. Chapter 15. The Camp of Deception Remembered. Long after the last prisoner leaves the fortress and the gates stand open to the wind, Theresienstadt refuses to fall silent. The walls remain. The streets remain. The buildings that once held thousands of starving bodies still cast the same shadows. But what lingers most powerfully is not what can be seen. It is what this place represents, a warning etched in a stone, proof of how easily cruelty can be disguised, and how willingly the world can be persuaded to look away. In the years after liberation, survivors struggled to explain what Theresienstadt truly was. They faced disbelief, confusion, even skepticism. Some listeners remember the Red Cross report. Others recall the propaganda film. They remember images of music, children, culture, apparent normality. Survivors are forced to dismantle those images piece by piece, to explain that everything shown was staged, curated, built on absence. That behind every smiling face was hunger. Behind every performance was coercion. Behind every clean street was a transport list. Theresienstadt occupies a dangerous place in Holocaust memory precisely because it does not fit the expected image of a killing center. There are no gas chambers here, no mass shootings in public squares. And yet more than 30,000 people died inside its walls from starvation and disease, while tens of thousands more were sent onward to extermination camps, never to return. Theresienstadt proves that genocide does not require visible violence to function. It can work slowly, bureaucratically, politely. The camp becomes a case study in deception, not only of prisoners, but of institutions, governments, and observers who wanted reassurance more than truth. The International Red Cross visit, though not malicious in intent, stands as a devastating failure of moral imagination. The inspectors saw what they were shown and accepted it. They did not push harder. They did not insist on unrestricted access. Their report, cautious and incomplete, became a shield behind which murder continued. The propaganda film survives as one of the most chilling artifacts of the Holocaust, not because of what it shows, but because of what it erases. The musicians, actors, and children who appear alive in content on screen were largely deported and murdered shortly after filming ended. The film freezes them in a lie, preserving an image that outlived their lives. It reminds us that images can outlast truth, and that lies, once recorded, can be harder to dismantle than silence. For historians, Theresienstadt challenges simplistic narratives. It forces uncomfortable questions. How many people suspected the truth, but chose not to confront it? How often does the desire for order override moral urgency? How easily can language, resettlement, self-administration, protection, be weaponized to obscure reality? Theresienstadt shows that genocide does not always announce itself with chaos. Sometimes it arrives dressed as civilization. Survivors carry this burden into their lives after the war. Many speak of guilt, not for actions taken, but for surviving in a place where survival was arbitrary. Artists question whether their performances help sustain the lie. Council members grapple with impossible decisions forced upon them. Parents mourn not only children lost, but promises made and broken. Memory becomes fragmented, shaped by trauma, by silence, by the difficulty of being believed. For decades, Theresienstadt is misunderstood. Some portray it as a model ghetto, a term that echoes Nazi language and minimizes suffering. Survivors push back relentlessly, insisting on accuracy. They describe overcrowding, hunger, disease, fear. They describe transports that emptied entire buildings. They describe how hope itself was manipulated to maintain control. Slowly, the narrative shifts. The truth, though delayed, begins to assert itself. Children's drawings emerge as some of the most powerful testimonies. Simple lines and bright colors capture a world that no longer exists, drawn by hands that would not survive to adulthood. These images speak where words fail. They show what was stolen, not only lives, but futures. Education, play, safety, possibility. Theresienstadt becomes not just a crime scene, but a graveyard of potential. The fortress itself is preserved, not as a monument to architecture, but as evidence. Visitors walk the streets once staged for cameras. They enter rooms where dozens slept stacked together. They see the crematorium, the barracks, the courtyards. The contrast between what was shown and what was hidden becomes painfully clear. Theresienstadt demands active remembrance. Passive acknowledgement is not enough. In a world increasingly shaped by media, Theresienstadt feels disturbingly modern. It reveals how curated narratives can neutralize outrage, how selective truth can paralyze action, how easily suffering can be edited out of frame. The camp's legacy extends beyond the Holocaust, warning of what happens when appearances are trusted over investigation, when reassurance is valued more than accountability. The survivors' voices, once fragile and contested, grow stronger with time. Testimonies are recorded, names restored, faces reclaimed from anonymity. Each story dismantles another layer of the lie. Memory becomes an act of resistance, pushing back against denial, distortion, and forgetting. Theresienstadt is reclaimed not as a place of false benevolence, but as a site of deliberate cruelty. Today, the camp stands as a lesson carved into history. It teaches that genocide does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sings. Sometimes it smiles for the camera. Theresienstadt reminds us that morality requires skepticism, that compassion requires courage, and that neutrality in the face of suffering is never neutral. The danger of Theresienstadt was never only what happened inside its walls. It was what happened outside them. The silence, the acceptance, the willingness to believe a lie because the truth was too disturbing. That danger has not disappeared. It waits in every era, every crisis, every moment when power controls the narrative. To remember Theresienstadt properly is to refuse comfort. It is to confront the unsettling reality that evil can be orderly, cultured, convincing. It is to honor not only those who died, but those who try to live with dignity inside a system designed to erase them. Musicians who played while starving. Teachers who taught without books. Children who drew suns in a place without warmth. The fortress no longer imprisons anyone, but its lesson endures. Theresienstadt stands as proof that genocide can hide in plain sight, and that vigilance is the only defense against it. Because the most dangerous lie ever told at Theresienstadt was not spoken by guards or filmed by cameras. It was the lie that nothing was wrong. And remembering is how that lie finally dies.